Okay, so we're going to pray. I'm going to pray. I'd like it if you join me. Father, thank you so much again for Sabbath. Thank you for just bringing us here together again and bringing your word alive to us. That it's not just about reading the Torah portion um, and just continuing to learn the same lessons, but each year, Abba, that you're opening our lives to new things, to promotions, to seasons of change and growth. And thank you for this fellowship that we're moving together and causing each other to grow and to mature and to be open to what you're teaching us, to recognize our blind spots. So we just thank you for that, Abba. Thank you for your faithfulness. Amen. So yeah, we're in Noah, the portion, which is Genesis 6:9 through chapter 11. That is really weird to look up there and see that. Um, and this portion is obviously about the time when the flood came and flooded the entire earth. And it kind of amazes me because there's lots of evidence throughout the world that many major cultures that have flood stories. Yet it's still something that even Christians don't necessarily all believe in, or they think it might have been just a local flood, or figurative. And there are a lot of Christians that believe the Old Testament is just figurative anyway, and not actually happened. I believe these things all happen, and I believe God allowed these people to walk through these things in a very real way so that we could learn. These could be our lessons, our spiritual lessons for us. And there's a lot of mercy. God meets us where we're at in our lives with things. So, um, He meets us and helps us with our faith in these really large lessons. So I pray that we can open our eyes to some of that today. Every time I teach, I go through the week, I'll read the portion, and I pray about it, I make notes, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't know what you want me to get from this. This week I felt numb. I think I felt numb all the way through Thursday. I read the portion, I prayed, I was like, this is good stuff, but it didn't impact my heart yet. And I was like, Lord, I know that you have something coming and I don't know what it is, but I felt very disconnected, and I just asked God to help me to connect. And what he was showing me, which was really cool because my brother called me yesterday and he called in the midst of this busyness. I was, doing a million things at once, and it was great timing. But I felt like I heard God say, take the phone call. You need to talk to him. And it was cool because I didn't even plan to really talk to him about. I thought, okay, I'll just kind of, give him the rundown of how things are and get off the phone. But as we were talking, I just felt like God said, open it up, open up your life right now, open up. So I did. I just said, I'm really battling with some things, and just feeling numb, feeling like I'm not connecting, and it was just amazing because having a guy's perspective too is huge. But what he shared, and he goes, "Can I just give you some advice?" And I was like, "Yes, but please be nice." He can be really black and white sometimes. Yeah, you guys know. But he was really sweet, and he spoke right to it, and he said, he goes, "You need to stop being critical in your head, critical of yourself, critical of your family." He said, you need to walk away. And I'm like, wouldn't that be rude if I just walked away when someone's talking to me? And he goes, no, walk away in your head. Walk away from the critical thoughts that come up. And it's funny because it's not something I recognize. I didn't see that. I didn't think I was being critical at all. I just thought I go, Kurt, I always pray when I'm in the middle of these things. I'm always asking God to help me. And he goes, that's good, but sometimes you have to stop and walk away from your thoughts in the midst of that. And it wasn't anything super profound, and it kind of irritated me, to be honest. He's like, you just need to get with God. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I get with God like all the time. But, so my first response was kind of irritation, but I took it to God, and it really, and it opened up the floodgates opened up, and it was a breakthrough. Michaela called me earlier in the week and she said, "Mom, um, she got out of lockdown. She's been in lockdown for 2 weeks. And then she gets to go to, or in quarantine, I mean. And then Hawaii was in lockdown also, but they've opened it up a little bit more. She got to go to the beach. And her first day at the beach, she cuts open both of her feet. Literally gashes like step one, and wasn't even doing parkour. She was just walking. But she stepped on a rock, I guess, slipped, and tried to catch herself with the other foot and cut them both in the process. And um, it was just an interesting. God's really letting her live some physical things. And as I was praying for her, I just said, Yahweh is teaching you how to walk. He's giving you a new walk right now. But she just said, gosh, every day she's just getting on fire with something God's doing, and it's been so cool to see my 19-year-old, doing this. And she said, because we had a lot of intercessory prayer this morning, and she goes, I prayed for you to have breakthrough. And so I've been hopeful all week, but I'm like, but I wasn't feeling it. But I was hopeful, and I felt it in my spirit that God was working out something. So just being able to allow my brother to have access into my life, to speak to me, to speak into some of those things and to offend me, but then to take it to God and ask him what's the truth in this, and him showing me some of those things. And you're kind of wondering, how does this relate to Noah? Well, Noah was commanded to build an ark. And it occurred to me that, Leanne talked about having a space or a private space, like I think is maybe how you said it, last week. That we go and sometimes we just have our kind of our safety places, or yeah, like someone in a car. They feel like, yeah, this is my domain. I can pump up the music. I can, have whatever thoughts I want to have. I can even do nice gestures with my hand, and most people won't see it or care. I can drive right off. Just the idea of being in your kind of your place. Um, but do we allow God to have access into those places? And that I thought was such a profound concept that I really started asking God about it this last week and saying, do I have a place like that where I don't allow you in? And I'm sure there's more than one probably, but he's just showing me the one right now because it's all I can handle probably. So Noah Noah built an ark, but it occurred to me, which ark do we build? Because there's an ark that God wants us to build that would bring us safety and would help us to live through a flood, to live through a time of trial. But we often build our own ark. we choose to build our own safety places that we walk into. Why did Noah find favor in the eyes of Yahweh? I am going to be throwing out questions as we go, and I do want to hear from you. So, what are some things that come to mind when I ask you, why did Noah, of all people, find favor in the eyes of Yahweh? What? He was perfect. What else? He was a God follower. Yeah. He was obedient. Right. Yeah. He didn't bow down to, right. Yep, Michelle. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Very good. I was thinking that too. He came from a line of men that walked with God, Wanda. Yeah. He communed with him constantly. Leanne said he walked with God, and that's because there's not a lot that is said about Noah before it gets into the flood story. But I think the thing that's really interesting is it says, here's the genealogy of Noah, and then it says he was a perfect man. He was a righteous man. Um, he was a Zadik, which is righteous, and he was perfect, Hamid. And those words, it's like it describes him, and then it goes into, and these are his sons. And I think that's really interesting because it's talking about his genealogy is the seed that he left. It's the legacy that he left. It's the things that he walked in as a righteous man of God. So it didn't just say, here's Noah, there's his son's names, and by the way, some of them were pretty messed up dudes. It's that he was righteous. He walked in God's ways, and he had these children. Yeah, he did it wholeheartedly. Um, that word, I don't know if I put it in my PowerPoint or not. Nope. Hamim, perfect, or yeah, perfect. It also means complete. It means with sincerity, with truth. So he was a complete man. Because how can anyone be perfect? Seriously, you look at that and go, oh my gosh, I could never attain that status. But it's being obedient to what God has given you. So the things that God commands you to do, are you obedient to? That's perfection in God's eyes. That's a complete person in God's eyes. He was considered, okay, sorry. In Bereshit, the last portion, the directive to Adam and Eve was to fill the earth with living creatures. Instead, in Genesis 6:11, the earth was filled with violence. So they built, which ark was built? Violence, and the word is Hamas, which is not a coincidence. It also that there is a terrorist organization named Hamas, um, which it means a lot of things besides violence. But I think one of them was to oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, it's bad. Um, but the world followed the flesh directive. Another interpretation of that is they robbed God. They robbed. They were constantly doing what was right in their own eyes. So we have this choice always, right? In everything we do, we have choice of life or death. But the directive given to Adam and Eve was to fill the earth and to fill it. And what did God fill his creatures with? Life. They were high nefesh, living creature, living flesh. But instead, they chose by their actions. And it always hit me as a kid thinking, okay, God literally just created the earth and it's so bad already, he's got to destroy it. And now, how many more years later are we? How come he hasn't destroyed it again? But he did make a promise never to destroy it again with floodwaters, at least. Yeah. So, we're going to read a little bit in Genesis. Do you want to turn lights off, or would you mind doing that? Okay. Karen says yes. Make it happen. Okay. That's okay. I'm going to bring what? These need to come off? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jerry. So, make yourself an ark, and I put a safe place, of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with a covering. And this is how you are to make it. The length of the ark is 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. God gives a lot of specificity here, doesn't he? Yeah, because it was legit. It was real. He was supposed to actually build the ark. It wasn't just a figurative thing. But when we look at it too, I was just thinking a lot about how the Old Testament, the Torah, gives direction. It is instruction. It's direction to God's people. And it's not a book that's old and irrelevant anymore. When we look at the New Testament, it should bring revelation to what the Old Testament was giving. So the New Testament should be really, should be adding on to what the Old Testament was. But the Old Testament is our instruction. These are the things that apply to us. So if you're wondering, how do I do something? Go back to the Torah. Ask the Lord. Ask the Lord to show you, because all the things for us and how to live our lives is in the Torah. So the instruction is make yourself an ark. So if you think back in Genesis, God created a place, a garden for Adam and Eve, and he put them in it, right? He hedged them in. He did it for them. Well, now they've matured. He's in a place where he's like, it's time for you to build an ark and to bring your whole family into it. Andrea brought up a really cool point the other night at Torah study. The difference between Lot and Noah. Lot was someone who he was saved out of a great calamity, right? But was it because of his righteousness? No, because he was a little bit of a scummy guy. We see in scriptures, at least that's what I would say, um, from the choices he was making for his family. And when it was time to go, his family didn't respect him. They didn't trust him either. Yeah, even his own wife doubted his decision in that and looked back. But Noah, he not only had his sons on board, but their wives said, okay, we're coming too. And it was obviously, it was the difference of life and death for their family. So there's probably significance. I know there's significance with the numbers here, 3 and 50, but that's not really my focus here right now. But if you're interested, you can look that up. Um, but the idea of making an ark, but covering it inside and outside with a covering, there's so much symbolism in that too. Who is our covering? It's Yeshua. And our covering comes from being obedient too. That brings down a blessing. And God puts people in our lives as coverings as well, right? My husband is my covering. Yeshua is our covering. This kahal is a covering to us to a degree as well. So we are to cover. Yeah, my parents still even right. So we have lots of physical coverings in our lives, and those coverings also help to keep us accountable. I was thinking even my brother, he's my older brother. But even if you're my younger brother, he's a covering to a degree because he's someone that I allow to have some access and authority in my life. He prays over all of us every single day too, our whole family and extended family. And he's been called to be a prayer warrior right now, and he's been very faithful to do it. So we're to make this ark and to cover it inside and outside with a covering. um, make a window. And that was the other thing I meditated on all week. I told Kathy, I'm like, what's with the window? She's done a really cool little insight on that too. But um, the window, the word zohar there, it means a light, and it comes from the word to glisten. So God said, make a window for the ark and complete it to a cubit from above and set the door of the ark in its side, make it with lower, second, and third deck. So the window part to me, I just had no insight in all week. I just thought, what in the world is this about? Do you have something on the window? You look like it. Oh, okay. Well, for one, yeah, obviously you would want a window on a ship like that so you don't go insane. But yeah, you need light for sure. So it does. It allows windows allow access, right? They allow a view inside what's going on, and they allow a view to see what's going on outside. You know, to a degree, you can't see everything, but so it gives a view inside and outside. It occurred to me that when I talked to my brother yesterday, that I had built this ark for myself, and I didn't realize it. I had built an arc of just in my head. I could not get out of my head, feeling very irritable about things and just impatient about life and things and feeling numb and all the things. But I think I had built my own arc. And the cool thing is, when he called me and God said, take the phone call, I put a window in that arc and I allowed access in, and I allowed him to have access into my life, and he gave me a view to see something outside of the ark I was in at the moment, which was really cool because it showed me, wow, I'm in the wrong ark right now. I just built the wrong ark, and I've been in it. And the graciousness of our God is that he allows you to jump out of that ark and jump right into his ark, even in the midst of a flood, you can do that. So that was what was really such a mercy to me. But the other part about that is the instruction that God gives us. It's funny because it's not like I've been walking in disobedience either. I've been like, Lord, what should I do this week? And you know, um, how should I eat? How should I plan my day? Like I've really been surrendering a lot of things. Surrendering my time and being really disciplined. But yet at the same time, I had this bondage going on over here. And it was really kind of a freaky thought that, oh my gosh, how did that happen? But you know what it really hits me in that is that that's why we have fellowship. That's why we have accountability in our lives. That's why we come together, because those are blind spots. Those are areas we need people to speak into our lives. That we need to allow them to. And doesn't mean everybody, but it needs to be people we trust, people that we know will hold us accountable to God's word, to God's instructions. So I think we know who those people are. We know the people that are going to just commiserate with us and say, it's not your fault. It's okay. You'll be okay. Just, but those aren't the people that we turn to when we really want to grow and mature through something. You know the people. The door also here is called Petak, and it is an opening too. So there's some significance about the door as well, which I'll go back to in a little bit. So verse 17 says, "And see, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy all flesh in which is the breath of life from under the heaven, all that is on the earth to die." So when God says to build an ark, in this case it was one giant cataclysmic event. It took Noah. Does anybody remember how long it took him to build this thing? How many? Yeah, was it 120 or 75? I guess, no, I don't remember. I think it was 120, which at that time was the lifespan of a man, right, of mankind. So it was a mercy, it was a grace. People could see him out there every day. And I think the theory is that there had not been any rain at all on the earth ever from the beginning of time. There had never been rain. So to come out there and say, hey, there's going to be rain, you guys should join me in the ark. People were like, are you kidding me, Noah? Are you, yeah, they probably thought he was really crazy. So there was that firmament, so the giant canopy of water over the earth, but that was literally like a greenhouse. This is what I learned on Thursday night too. Wanda and Andrea helped me. But yeah, I have actually, Kent Hovind did a lot of this on creation, but the idea was that there was highly saturated oxygen and moist environment that just kept everything really green. So there hadn't been rain. That would have been a crazy concept to just even try to explain. Plus, they had underneath all the fountains of the deep. So the geysers, I can't think of the word right now, the springs that were under there too. So God says, I'm bringing you floodwaters on the earth. Well, when God has us build an ark, we might be building more than one ark in our lifetime. We probably should be. There's times that God takes us out of something and he says, just commune with me for a while. I just want you right here in this ark. I just want to have you and me one-on-one for a while. And I want to teach you some things. And I'm going to allow you to do that. And I'm going to take you through some tests. I'm going to take you through tragedies. I'm going to take you through whatever life throws at you. So we'll have several arcs throughout our lifetime. But that's how merciful and loving and kind our God is. He always provides a way of escape. He always has provided a remnant too. He always, always, always preserved life. Yep. So I'm bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy all flesh. So thank God he was destroying some of my flesh this week, right? And this is cool because it says all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under the heavens. All that is on the earth is to die. And the word for earth, eretz, it means land. There's a word for earth and there's a word for heavens, and it's shamayim, and it actually means water. Mayim is water, but shamayim is like fire. It references the letter for ish, for fire. So it's like fire water. Yeah, I don't know. There's so much to it I don't even understand. But verse 18, I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. This one hit me too. If you're a parent and you have adult children that may or may not walk with God or walk closely with God, and you're concerned for them, this says, I will establish my covenant with you, Noah, and you'll come into the ark and your family too. That's a covering. That's a blessing and a covering. But Noah had to be obedient to that covenant. That to me, what God showed me when I was single too, that was not just written to men. I was a covering. I made covenant for my children and my family. I was the spiritual covering and head of my home in that time. And that extended on down to my children, and it'll extend to my generations to come after too. And that comes from generations that went before us. One of the studies that my brother has been doing, he actually did Ancestry.com. I don't know how accurate these things are, but one of the things it says we're related to is Dr. Roland Taylor, who also was related to William Tyndale, who helped translate the Bible into English. But Dr. Roland Taylor was burned at the stake for standing against um, heresies in the church. He was a Protestant, and so he protested Catholicism and indulgences and all the things. And he stood, and he was known for, he was a pastor in a local church, but he stood for righteousness. He actually was known for giving away his money, for reaching out to the local congregation all the time, having them stay with him, helping them. He was like a true pastor should be. Um, he had such influence, King Henry VIII appointed him. As soon as he died, a week after he died, Bloody Mary, Queen of Scots, had him murdered, had him burned at the stake. He was just a pastor in a small town. But why did he have such influence? And I meant to say, why did this queen target him, when he was just of no consequence? She eventually wiped out, as many Protestants as she could, but she went for him right off the bat. There was a spiritual authority there. It says we're related to him. I don't know. I think that's a pretty neat story. I thought, if that's the case, that makes sense to me, that why our generations, why we go against the grain, why we stand up for these things, why it's on our hearts to be a light in the darkness, you know. So I don't know, but that to me is like Noah and his generations too, and the ones that came before him, as Michelle pointed out. So I will establish my covenant with you. Remember that. These are important milestones. These are really, really, instead of praying anymore, like, oh God, help me, help my kids. Thank you, God, that you made covenant. Thank you, God, that you're saving them and you're protecting them. Yeah, stand on it. Verses 19 and 20. Oh, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, that's good. Remind God of the covenant. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, because why do we need to remind God? Does he forget? Um, but it says later on here too, and God remembered Noah. It's like, really? You're kind of in the middle of doing something here, God. How'd you forget me? But he never forgets. It's that it's the cause to bring to mind again. It's to bring to the forefront. It's right now you're over here, Noah, and I'm doing this, but okay, now you're right here again. Let's deal. So in verses 19 and 20, and of all the living of all flesh, two of each you are to bring into the ark, to keep them alive with you, a male and a female. Of the birds, okay, first let me just ask, kids can answer too. Um, how does he know? This says two of each, right? So later on it talks about clean and unclean. How did Noah know which were clean and unclean? Because what? He's a godly man. That's good. Had the Torah been given yet? No, it had not. But Michael, he did. God sent the animals, but he also told Noah to get the clean ones and the unclean, to separate them out. So Noah would have had to know, right? He had walked with God. Yeah, yeah, that's good. There was a concept before the beginning of time in the oral Torah, which is the spirit of Torah, which is how God does teach us. He reveals things to us, right? He just knew. And Adam, right. So of the birds after their kind, and of the cattle after their kind, and of the creeping creatures of the ground after their kind, two of each are to come to you to keep them alive. Noah's charge was to keep them alive. As for you, take of all food that is eaten and gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them. And Noah did according to all that Elohim commanded him, so he did. So this was a really cool concept that Karen brought out on Torah study night too. Take of all the food that's eaten and gather it to yourself. Or this may not be the scripture I was thinking later on. Nope. That it was supposed to be food for them and for their seed. So God said, bring the food in, not just for you to live during this time, but for your seed, for afterwards, and to bring food for the animals too. But this was to keep the life going. It was to prolong life. Kyla asked me, why did he even bring unclean animals on? Yeah, to clean up. That's good. And they were food for some of the other creatures, not all of them. Most of them were herbivores, but yeah, they have a purpose. Even though they're not food for us, they still serve a purpose on the earth, right? The seed of the plants was to be preserved. Yep. Yeah. Which again was so that there could be more life later on. So I established my. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm past that. Let's see here. Yeah, it says that he did this completely. He was complete, but he was also very obedient. Everything he did, so he did. No question, no back and forth. But God, I don't really know how to do this, or I don't even know how big a football field is, or whatever. I mean, I think this was like 3.5 football fields, or something crazy like that, or maybe just one. It was huge, but and Noah did it, and you imagine the burden that must have been, huh? Genesis 7:11 says, it should have said 600th year of Noah's life, not 60th. In the second new moon, what's in the first new moon? What do we celebrate? Pesach, Passover, good. What happens in the second new moon if you miss the first Pesach? You get to do a second one, right? That's a mercy that God gives. If you were unclean, you weren't able to make the first Passover, He gives you a chance for a second one. So in the 17th day of the new moon, this is after unleavened, or actually would have been in the middle of unleavened, because Passover started on the 14th day. So this would have been right in the middle of unleavened, that all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of the heavens were open, and the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So the fountains of the great deep were the things that broke up in me that day when I talked to my brother. They were things that were deeply held beliefs and um, thought processes that were there. But when I allowed that light to come in that window, that those were broken up, and God allowed me to have a new vision, a new light, to see what was out there. The windows of the heavens were open. There was even some of that happened, and it was great. So the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. What is 40 significant of? Testing. Yeah, what are some examples throughout the Bible that we see as 40? 40 years in the desert. Yeshua was tempted for 40 days. Yep. There's probably more 40s. I can't think of any right now. But so this was a time of testing. But how cool that God already gave him a promise and already gave him some victory. He began working in him. And, God does those things so that you have the encouragement to go on. He gives you a victory. So you're like, okay, I guess I'll keep on this diet. I guess I'll do whatever this is that, God put before me. Genesis 7:17, and the flood was on the earth 40 days, and the waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. Have you ever been through a really hard time that you look at and you go, God, I should be like a total mess, but I'm actually making it through this. I should be like on the floor, like unable to do anything, but yet I'm able to walk because God has lifted me up above this. He is buffering me through this trial. What an amazing thing this is. Nasa, to bear or to accept. John 3:14 says, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the son of Adam has to be lifted up. It's not the same word used there, but the meanings are the same here. When God lifts us up, He bears, He was willing to accept the burden for us, right? He did that in the Old Testament too. We should be seeing Yeshua all over the Torah, right? So He bears these burdens for us. If we are in His ark, we barely feel it. I'm sure they felt some of the rocking of the ocean, rocking of the waves. I know I probably would have been hurling the first day, just the ocean sickness, but eventually you get used to it, right? And you were able to walk through that and live through that. Hopefully, yeah, seriously. So, what a great God that He does bear that big burden for us. Genesis 7:21, all flesh died. So all the things that they were battling, all the things that He had to deal with, all the mockers, all the people that were saying, no, this is impossible, you're ridiculous, you're insane. Um, all of the voices of the accuser in that area, God took care of, because Noah put his faith. He put all his faith in God, because he put his entire family into what God said to build. And by so doing, God took care of the flesh that needed to be wiped out. The creeping creature on the earth, the birds and the cattle, the beasts, every swarming creature that swarms on the earth, and all mankind. So there were those animals that were meant to be preserved. So there are things in our flesh nature that are meant to be preserved, that God wants to preserve because they're good and they're things that He wants to use. We have some of those things in us that help us to clean up, right? And then some of the nature in us is for food. So the waters were mighty on the earth, 150 days. Quick, how many months is that? 5 months. Yep, good job. Yep, 5 months. So 5 months, the waters were on the earth. Grace, maybe? Torah? I don't know. Um, anyway, moving on. Oh, well, it's a period of time from Sukkot to Passover. Oh yeah, I was thinking it's also from the second Passover to Sukkot, second month to the seventh month, huh? And Elohim remembered Noah, and Elohim made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. So He caused His breath of life to pass over. He started bringing those waters down. So those waters were judgment, but they were also deliverance, right? When you're on the side of Yahweh, you're on the side of deliverance. When you're in your own ark, you're bringing judgment on yourself. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were stopped. We're not meant to always be in that perpetual state of being broken. It's for a season. It's for a purpose. It's for a maturing so that we can walk into our next season. God often tests us with something that He's preparing us for something greater in our next season. So the fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were stopped, and the rain from the heavens was withheld, and that was for a purpose. The waters decreased steadily until the 10th new moon. So how impatient do you think Noah might have been in this? I don't know. I think personally it would be extremely difficult. I guess I keep thinking of Michaela being in quarantine for 2 weeks. This is a child that can't even stand to sit still at night. She comes home after dinner, eats, and is out on the trampoline, and just to be in a one room, hotel room, basically. Literally couldn't even go out on her deck with another roommate for 2 straight weeks. God did a new thing in her. He absolutely did. She said, yeah, there's moments of freak out. There's waves of crazy. But she's like, but they're just waves and I'm okay. I'm actually doing really well. I know that was God that took her through that because man, yeah, I was actually really worried about her in that. So this I think is what God brought to Noah too. The ability to just be okay with where they were in this. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. It was a time of rest for him, huh? That's true. That's a good point. She said it after all those years of building the ark, it probably was like, oh, I get to chill a little bit. I'm on a cruise. Is it all? And it was all inclusive too. Yeah, that's true. Lorraine. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He had work to do. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's probably kept him busy, and I'm sure God taught him things through that, feeding my sheep, feeding my animals, and it wasn't just him; his whole family had a part. That's right. Everyone was serving though together as a family. That's good. So, sorry. So he came to be at the end of 40 days. Noah opened the window of the ark, which he had made, and he sent out a raven. So here, that window was an important aspect. It wasn't just for looking out; it was for testing too. He was able to send a raven out, which kept going out and turning back until the waters had dried up from the earth. It went out a couple, three times. I don't remember exactly now. Um, and then the dove came to him in the evening, and so he had sent out a dove. It came back with nothing, and I don't know if Noah just went, "Oh God," if he had a little bit of a meltdown or not. Maybe he was like, "It's okay, it'll be good." And then he sent out the dove again. It came back with a freshly plucked olive leaf, and Noah knew the otters' watchers had receded from the earth. I typed this really fast this morning. So he knew the waters had receded. That was his sign. But the olive leaf too, even what is that? What first of all, what comes to mind when you think of that? A picture of Yeshua? Okay. It's a symbol of peace. The olive tree. I think it's like that olives are like some of the best food ever. And it's yeah, that's what I was thinking of too. It's a source of oil. It's where we get, and oil is represented as spirit too, God's spirit. You have to press the olive to get the oil. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But obviously it meant, hey, there's new life on earth again, and we're going to be able to go out soon. So that was a huge, I'm sure, a day of celebration for everyone on the ark. And they knew they had been taken through something. They knew they had come through a hard season, and that God had matured them and was preparing them. Sorry, I keep hitting my mic, for the next thing. Um, the other neat thing too, which I think, oh, I skipped over. It's okay. I'm not going to go back. So Genesis 8:13 and 14. It came to be in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the new moon. So this would be springtime ish. That the waters were dried up from the earth. Noah removed the covering for the ark and looked and saw the surface of the ground was dry. Okay, so we think about how many times has God revealed dry earth to, to his people when he's like, hey, follow me. Okay, one of those times was coming out of Egypt when he parted the seas and he gave them dry ground to walk on. Crossing the Jordan into the promised land, there was dry land. Yeah, it's a new season. So what you once would have said, wait, we're not supposed to be doing this, God said, nope, you're in a different season. Now you can walk here. There's mercy. The door is time to open that door now. You don't remain in the ark forever. So in the second new moon, so again, he waited another month on the 27th day. This would have been after that second Passover, after unleavened. The earth was dry. And he said, go out of the ark, for heaven's sake. You and your wife and your sons' wives with you. He's like, it's time. You've made covenant. You've come through this. Now go out. Go out into your next season. I think that I might have another slide. I don't remember now. Okay, it's suddenly not working. Did you? Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, it was his time to move on, to go into the next season. And the cool thing too is that he sends a very visible sign that he says, I'll never do this again. I'll never wipe out all of humankind with a flood. And what sign did he give us for that? A rainbow. Yeah, that's true. There's always a counterfeit. But rainbow, ever since I was a kid, it was like one of my favoriteest things. I had the coolest rainbow shirt. And now I know why, because it's something God was going to show me as an adult. It's His promise. It's a milestone, though, and those are the things we need to look back in our lives. I was talking to Connie yesterday, and it was cool. We were just recounting ways we've heard or felt God move. We felt His Spirit move in us and things, and it occurred to me those were the rainbows in our lives. Those are those milestones where He said, "I did this. Remember this," because we really can doubt very quickly and very easily, and we see that with Noah, planting the vineyard and doing his thing he does later on. But by the way, that wasn't just like the next day. If you think about it, he had to plant a vineyard. It had to grow. It had to mature. It had to be able to make wine from it. That was several years down the road. But anyway, um, not as important right now. But the rainbow is an important sign, and that is something to keep in mind and to remember to go back. And the other thing that God's been putting on my heart recently is to start journaling again, writing down things, writing down the things I'm battling, and the things that I'm overcoming and how God's doing it, and remembering that each week is a cycle. Each week of 7 days is a cycle that God takes us through. It's a little mini lesson in life. It might be a little mini arc that He takes you through. It was for me this week for sure. So, but remember that don't just approach the week like, oh, another week of work. It's, what are you going to teach me this week? What's the lesson this week, God? And that's a really refreshing way to look at our week, because I'm going to mature this much a little bit. Yeah, you know what that meant. A little bit more this week, a little bit more this week. And the cool thing that He takes you through in that. If anybody would like to pray afterwards, please come up here, and we're happy to pray with you, or you can pray alone. But yeah, use this time for that if you would like. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for your amazing, just the things that you bring to light when we take the time with you. Thank you for how you've transformed my life this week, and I know you've worked in others, and that how you will transform all of our lives this coming week. So we just bless you, and we thank you for that, Abba. You are faithful, and we trust you. We choose to trust you. Amen.